At family brunch, they toasted to family unity right after announcing they would use Grandpa's inheritance to clear my brother's large credit debt. I kept a neutral face while my brother whispered, "You probably don't have much left to give." I stirred my coffee and replied, "If you say so." As they loudly planned how to renovate his house with what was left, I checked my bank app. The trust fund I opened 11 weeks ago was already locked. "If you say so," I murmured, stirring my coffee as the clinking of glasses echoed around the brunch table. To family unity, Dad toasted, holding up his mimosa like it meant something. Everyone laughed. My brother beamed. My mother dabbed the corner of her eye like she was touched by the moment. Unity, sure, if by unity you mean announcing right in front of me that they'd use Grandpa's inheritance to clear Alex's $82,000 in credit card debt, that same inheritance they told me we'd split equally. I didn't say a word. I didn't argue. Didn't flinch. I've learned that in my family, silence is often mistaken for agreement, and sometimes that's useful. Alex leaned toward me, lowering his voice just enough to pretend he cared about subtlety. "You probably don't have much left to give, huh?" His smile was sugary toxic. I didn't look up, just kept stirring the same cold coffee. I wasn't planning to drink. "If you say so," I said calmly. That smug grin of his, it faltered just for a second, because he knew what I meant, or at least he suspected. As they went back to planning how to use what's left of Grandpa's money to renovate Alex's condo, I pulled out my phone under the table and checked my bank app. 11 weeks ago, I opened a trust fund in a different state under my own name, quietly, carefully. The account was already locked, airtight. They wouldn't be able to touch a dime of it. No matter how many stories Mom wept out about Alex's fresh start, Alex was never supposed to get that money. Grandpa wanted it split equally, he told me himself in his quiet way, 2 months before he passed. A handshake, a nod, a look that said, "I trust you." Apparently, my parents and Alex had their own interpretation of fairness. I smiled faintly and set my phone face down on the table. They were too busy discussing color schemes and kitchen islands to notice. You'd think a family would respect a dying man's wishes. You'd be wrong. After Grandpa passed, I gave them space. I figured grief would bring us together, like a dozen movies. What I got instead was silence, no calls, no updates, just a short group text from Mom. "We'll handle the estate. Don't worry about it." I should have worried, because while I was lighting candles and sorting through Grandpa's old war medals, they were already meeting with lawyers behind my back. And not just to settle the paperwork, no, they were restructuring the entire estate plan. I only found out when I called Grandpa's lawyer myself, a quiet man named Green, who paused way too long after I said my name. "They've taken some steps," he said. "Moved a portion of the liquid assets into an account tied to Alex." "Half right?" I asked, already feeling cold. Another pause. "Well, that's complicated." It always is. Turns out Mom and Dad claimed that Grandpa's original will didn't reflect the urgent financial realities of the family, specifically Alex's. So they requested an amendment, a family provision adjustment, and argued that I didn't need the money the same way Alex did. Alex, who had maxed out 5 credit cards. Alex, who borrowed $18,000 from a friend and then ghosted him. Alex, who once tried to flip ENFs and lost a third of Grandpa's pre-inheritance cash before the man was even cold in the ground. "Your brother is going through a lot," Mom said when I confronted her. "He's always going through something." I shot back. She didn't flinch. "But you're doing fine. You don't even have a mortgage, right?" "Because I saved. Because I planned. Because I didn't bet my life on pyramid schemes and prayer." That week, I sat down with my own lawyer, a real one, not a family friend. I showed him the trust documents Grandpa and I drafted 6 months before he died, the ones that specified equal division, not proportional, not needs-based, equal. He read them, looked up, and said one sentence that sealed everything for me. "If they diverted any funds before probate closed, that's serious legal misconduct." I had proof. 3 weeks before the will was settled, Alex made 2 large withdrawals from Grandpa's personal account, nearly $29,000 combined. One labeled consulting fees, the other simply Alex J. reimbursement. The account was only accessible to Grandpa and Mom, which meant she either gave him access or looked away. I printed every statement, locked it in a folder, took it to a notary, filed a quiet report with the estate court just in case. And still, I said nothing. I played the role of dutiful son. I nodded at brunches. I said thank you when mom gave me leftovers. I even helped Alex pick out tile samples for his upcoming renovation, which I knew they were planning to pay for with my half of the inheritance. Then at a casual Sunday brunch in my parents' backyard, surrounded by lilacs, mimosas, and performative family joy, Dad lifted his glass and said, "To family unity, to supporting each other no matter what," and I smiled. That's when Alex leaned over and whispered, "You probably don't have much left to give." I nearly laughed in his face, not just because of the irony, but because I'd already moved my share to a bulletproof irrevocable trust. Out of reach, out of sight, untouchable. But here's the part that still wakes me up at night. They didn't stop at the inheritance. 2 days after that brunch, I got a call from a loan officer, a friendly woman who asked if I was reapplying for the $50,000 line of credit I'd supposedly requested last month. I hadn't. I froze. Asked her for the paperwork. She emailed it over. It was my name, my address, my social, even my digital signature forged. Attached, a scanned utility bill with my name and Alex's listed on the same account. A fake, poorly photoshopped, but to a busy bank processor passable. That's when I knew Alex had tried to take a loan in my name. I called him immediately. No. Greeting. You tried to take out a loan using my name. Silence. Then, it wasn't like that. Oh, then how was it? It was just temporary. I needed to cover the last of the renovations before the inspection. You've got better credit. I was going to pay it back. I hung up. A minute later, my phone rang again. Mom, honey, she started, that voice she uses when she's about to gaslight someone. Alex told me what happened. I know it looks bad, but he was desperate. You know how stressed he's been. He didn't mean it, you knew. It wasn't my idea, but you let it happen. Silence. And then, as if she hadn't just admitted to enabling financial fraud against her own son, she said, "Why are you being so difficult? You have so much already." That's when the last thread snapped. Because she was right, I did have something. Not just savings, not just legal documents. I had leverage, and I was finally ready to use it. 3 weeks later, I walked into the dining room like I was just another pawn in their charade. Alex had invited me over for a celebratory dinner. They'd finally finished renovating the house with what was left of Grandpa's inheritance. Mom insisted on making her famous roast, and Dad was already in his usual seat at the head of the table, sipping red wine like a Roman senator. The dining table gleamed. New granite countertops sparkled behind them. Alex had a fresh haircut and that same smug look he always wore when he thought he'd won. I sat down, quiet, calm, until dessert. "That chocolate tart is amazing," I said, pushing my plate back. "Almost makes up for the serious misconduct you committed." The room froze. Mom's fork clattered. Alex blinked, stunned. Dad looked up, wine glass halfway to his mouth. "What did you just say?" he asked, voice low. I said. I repeated, sliding the folder onto the table. "This almost makes up for the unauthorized use of my identity and estate interference." "What are you talking about?" Alex said, laughing nervously. "I'm talking about the forged loan application you submitted under my name," I replied, calm as a surgeon. "The fake utility bill you used as proof of address. The $29,000 you pulled from Grandpa's personal account before probate closed. And how Mom and Dad covered for it." "No," Mom started, panic already rising in her voice. "This is a misunderstanding." I opened the folder, tapped on the pages inside. "Here's the loan application. Here's the forgery report from the bank's fraud department. Here's the notarized statement from Mr. Green, Grandpa's lawyer. And here," I said, sliding over a printed email, "is the response from the estate judge confirming your adjustments were unlawful." Alex turned pale. Sweat started to form on his forehead. Dad set down his glass slower than usual. "I could go to the police," I continued. "You'd be facing unauthorized use of my personal information, wire fraud, and misuse of estate funds. This could carry serious consequences if formally investigated." "Are you serious?" Alex muttered. "I haven't done it yet, because I wanted to give you one final gift." They looked at me wide-eyed. "My silence in exchange for yours." I stood, pushing my chair back slowly. "You're going to sign a legal release forfeiting all further claims on Grandpa's estate. You'll refund whatever's left in that account. And you," I turned to Mom and Dad, "will issue a written statement acknowledging your role in enabling that fraud." "And if we don't?" Dad asked. I smiled. "Then we let the courts decide. In the papers. And your golf buddies, and everyone else in your perfect little suburban bubble. Mom covered her mouth. You think I care anymore? I snapped, voice rising. You think I care about protecting the family name when you let your son try to steal from me twice and blame me for making it a big deal? Please, Mom said, tears starting. We didn't know how bad it was. We just wanted to help him. No, I said. You wanted to bury it. You wanted to protect Alex at any cost, even if it meant turning away from me. Dad finally spoke, his voice tired. You've made your point, but this is still family. Do you really want to destroy that over money? I looked him straight in the eye. It's not about money. It's about respect, about dignity, about not being treated like a walking ATM with a pulse. Alex pushed back his chair, suddenly furious. You're just bitter I got the house. That grandpa liked me better. That you're a boring nobody with a boring job. And I pulled out my phone, hit play. It was a recording one I made during a previous call with Alex, where he joked about squeezing a few grand out of grandpa before he croaked. Everyone went dead silent. Alex's mouth opened, then closed. I said quietly, you call your lawyer first thing tomorrow, because this is me being nice. I walked out, left them there shattered, ashen, silent. The next day, I got a call from Dad. We'll sign, he said. No anger, just defeat. But you didn't have to do this. No, I replied, you didn't have to. 3 months, that's how long it's been since I turned my family upside down, since I walked out of that dining room and left behind their stunned faces and half-eaten chocolate tart, since I stopped being the fixer, the donor, the obedient son, and the silence glorious. No birthday texts, no fake check-ins, no passive-aggressive voicemails. Nothing but the occasional email from their new lawyer, the one handling the paperwork for the trust restructuring and official estate redistribution. The release form was signed the next day. Alex tried to stall, of course, but when I reminded him that a felony charge would wreck whatever tiny scraps remained of his credit, he folded like damp paper. They wired back 11,370, the last of what was left. Not even close to my rightful half, but I didn't care. The money was never the point. The point was that they lost. And I didn't. The week after the paperwork was finalized, I did something none of them saw coming. I quit my job, not in a dramatic way. I walked into my manager's office, shook his hand, and thanked him for the last 6 years. Then I booked a flight not to Bali, not to Rome, to Montana. There, in a cabin Grandpa once took me to as a kid, the only place I ever felt seen by a member of my family, I stayed alone for 2 weeks. No calls, no news, no noise. And for the first time in years, I breathed. I hiked. I journaled. I read Grandpa's old letters, the ones he wrote to Grandma during the war, full of love and regret and promises to be better when he came home. I won't repeat the mistakes of the men before me, he wrote once. Too bad his son didn't read that part. When I returned, something had shifted. My walk was lighter. My voice was clearer. I wasn't angry anymore, I was awake. And that's when the calls started. First from Mom. Honey, I was thinking maybe we could talk, just the two of us. I didn't respond. Then from Dad. We miss you. Can we meet for lunch? I sent a single text. No. But the one that nearly made me laugh came from Alex. Bro, I know things got heated, but we're still family, right? Can we at least talk? I screenshotted it, filed it next to the forged loan papers, just in case. It didn't stop there. 2 weeks later, I got a message from a name I didn't recognize. Melissa, Alex's ex, the mother of his 2 kids. We'd only met twice. I barely remembered her. But the message read, I just wanted to thank you for finally doing what no one else in your family had the spine to do. You have no idea how long I've waited for someone to hold him accountable. We ended up talking for an hour. She told me things I hadn't known about how Alex drained their joint accounts, about how he'd lied to the courts during their custody battle, about how my parents covered for him again. You think they only exploited you financially? She said. Try emotionally. Try watching your son cry because Grandma says, Daddy didn't mean it. I hung up, shaking not with anger, but with clarity. I wasn't the only one they hurt. I wasn't alone. And that realization, it gave me power. I started setting new boundaries. Not just with them, but with everyone. No more unpaid favors. No more guilt trips disguised as love. No more one-sided loyalty. I got a new phone number, new bank, new therapist, new home, the cabin in Montana. I bought it quietly in cash, put it under an LLC so no one could trace it easily. My escape hatch, just in case the city ever felt too loud again. And then something I never expected happened. I got a package, no note, just a small velvet box. Inside, Grandpa's old pocket watch, the one I thought was lost. No return address, but I knew it was Dad. His way of apologizing without saying the words, his way of asking for a second chance. I didn't respond, because the message I'd already sent was louder than any watch or letter ever could be. You don't get to bury someone in guilt and then ask for grace when the shovel breaks. I'm not the same son who sat quietly at the brunch table, pretending to sip cold coffee while my family divvied up my future. I'm the man who said no, and meant it. And for the first time in my life, that's enough. They say every family has secrets, but mine didn't bother hiding theirs. They wore them like badges, justifications for betrayal, excuses for exploitation, rationalizations for using me like a human ATM with no overdraft limit. What they didn't count on, what no one ever expects from the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who always fixes everything, is that I would wake up, that I would not just walk away, that I walked away for good, and I didn't look back, because, here's the truth, the final betrayal wasn't Alex forging my name, wasn't my parents rerouting Grandpa's money, wasn't even the loan application with the fake utility bill. The final betrayal was the moment I realized they never loved me for who I was, only for what I gave. And that understanding shattered me more than anything else, because I spent years bending over backwards believing that one day they'd see, one day they'd thank me, one day they'd stop taking and just say, you matter. That day never came. So I made it for myself. It's been 6 months now, 6 months since I shattered the illusion, since I said no and meant it, since I burned the fantasy that I owed my family some invisible, eternal debt. And do you know what happened after I stopped bleeding for them? I healed. I bought the Montana cabin Grandpa loved, paid in full with the remains of what they couldn't steal. I changed my phone number, moved banks, changed my emergency contacts. I cut every thread they used to pull me back in. They reached out, of course. First, it was guilt. This isn't how families treat each other. Then, twist the facts to confuse me. We were just trying to help your brother. Then threats. You regret this when we're gone. And finally, desperation. Please, just talk to us. But I'd heard it all before dozens of times. Different costumes. Same emotional pressure. Show. This time, I didn't buy a ticket. I didn't even open the curtain. And something strange happened. When the noise stopped, I started hearing myself. Not the version they built, the selfless, financially secure, emotionally numb son. No, I found the version that laughed without apology, that read books at sunrise, that didn't feel guilty for saying, I'm tired. That made coffee in silence and didn't have to brace for a phone call asking for money. I started therapy, real therapy, not venting. I dug into the scars, the way my mom's voice made me flinch when she said, I just think, the way my Dad's silence meant disappointment, the way Alex's laughter triggered nausea because I learned that his amusement always came at someone else's expense. I unpacked it all, then I threw it away, because it wasn't mine to carry anymore. Last week, I got a letter handwritten from Dad, 5 pages. No excuses, no denials, just one sentence that stopped me cold. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you're finally free. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, not because I forgive him, not yet, but because he finally saw it. What they stole, what they broke, and what I rebuilt without them. A month ago, I met someone, not romantically, not yet, that's still a landmine I'm learning to tiptoe through, but someone kind. Someone who didn't know my family, my baggage, or my bank account. Someone who looked me in the eye and said, you seem grounded, like someone who doesn't waste time. And I smiled, because it was true. For the first time in my adult life, I'm not waiting to be chosen. I'm not auditioning for love with acts of sacrifice. I'm not proving my worth with Venmo transfers and unspoken resentments. I'm just living. And that, I've learned, is the loudest rebellion of all. So no, I don't regret any of it, not the confrontation, not the fallout, not the cold silence that followed. Because sometimes the only way to end the cycle is to break it so loud they can't pretend not to hear it. I don't want revenge anymore. I want peace. And I've earned every quiet second of it. Let them call me selfish. Let them spin their stories. Let them sit with the consequences of their choices of a son who finally said, enough, because I did what they never expected. I chose myself, and I'll never stop choosing me.